Living in downtown Halifax may seem like a dream for many. Maybe it's close to work, there's trendy cafes, lots of great restaurants, tons of entertainment, and let's not forget that incredible Halifax waterfront vibe. But what many people don't talk about are the everyday headaches that come with it. As somebody who lives in the heart of Halifax, I'm dealing with these constantly, and today I'm going to talk about the real downsides of living on the Halifax Peninsula. But just before I get into it, if you're new here, my name is Andrew Stevens. I'm a realtor in Halifax. And if you get anything out of this video, don't forget to hit that like button and hit that subscribe button. And if you're thinking about making a move in the Halifax area, you can reach out to me anytime in the Calendly link below. And if you're new to Halifax, or if you're thinking about making a move to Halifax and you want to learn more, don't forget to check out my other channel, The Halifax Insider, which talks all about living in Halifax. All right, let's start off with commuting. It is getting worse and it's absolutely miserable. Now, it was always the case that commuting on the peninsula was worse than the suburbs, but it's only getting worse. A few weeks ago, there was an article in All Nova Scotia with a traffic expert talking about the fact that they believed in 5 years Halifax would reach Toronto levels of traffic. And honestly, when I think about 5 or 10 years down the road and what the traffic on the Halifax Peninsula may look like, it's honestly a pretty scary thought to think about. Number two, there is development going on everywhere across the city. Now, this means more noise. This means hideous development sites to look at. This means different changes in the city in terms of commuting. It means traffic congestion. And it means that there's a ton of constant changes coming to our city. Now, there are obviously some pros with this. As more developments happen, there's more local businesses going in the bottom of them. It's really ramping up in some areas and making some areas look a lot nicer. However, this is not the case for every single development, and it really depends on what area it's in and so on. Next up, let's talk about the lack of infrastructure changes, not to mention a lot of the problems that we see in around the peninsula are tough or near impossible to change at all. For example, there's only a few main ways to get into the city: Roby Street, Bears Road, Quinpool, Chebucto. 2 of the 4 are often down to 1 lane. Both bridges are jammed pretty much all the time, and when they're closed, it's an absolute train wreck. Cogswell Interchange is torn up and it's a nightmare. The Windsor Street Exchange is in need of serious work, and that's going to be a nightmare when that's under construction. Plus, the addition of bus lanes in many areas has resulted in the traffic being down to 1 lane going in and out, which is absolutely brutal. Next up, the homeless population is rising, and this is especially noticeable on the peninsula. This is the case in many areas of HRM, but on the peninsula, it's certainly more noticeable. At many corners, you have people panhandling, and in some of Halifax's most scenic areas, we're seeing more and more tents pop up, for example, on the Halifax Commons. Next up, it's expensive as hell to live in Halifax. This coincides with the homeless population rising as rents and housing are going through the roof. Not to mention the overall cost of living in Nova Scotia in general is through the roof, and many people right now are struggling as the wages in Halifax are not keeping up with this high cost of living. Next up, the lack of overall space. So many homes are very close together, there's very tight parking situations, very small backyards, and sometimes not even really any backyards at all, or no parking at all. This is true city living on the Halifax Peninsula. There's only so much land to go around, and things are getting denser and denser. And the truth is, if you're not looking for this type of city living, then the Halifax Peninsula is definitely not for you. Next up, we have rodents. And yes, we have a lot of rodents. We're a port city, so I would say this is pretty normal. And if you think there's never been a mouse in your house in Halifax, then I'm here to tell you that you just haven't seen one. They're definitely in there. I pay for monthly bait boxes through Truly Nolan. It's a great service, and if I stop paying for them, I definitely see a difference in the amount of mice I'm seeing in my home. But if I keep up with the bait boxes on their monthly program, I rarely see a mouse in the house. Next up, there's a serious lack of parking on the peninsula, and I only see this as likely to get worse. In all honesty, I think in 5 to 10 years, very few people will actually drive into the Halifax Peninsula. I think they'll take transit, or I think they'll take Ubers and so on, because I think the parking situation is going to get so much worse on the peninsula. As a pro tip, if you can't find any street parking, check out some of the bigger parking garages such as the Nova Center, such as the Queen's Mark, or the Hollis Street Parkade. But again, oftentimes throughout the day, these are pretty jammed, especially if there's conferences and stuff like that in town, or events at some of the hotels that I often use as my go-to parking spots in the downtown core. Next up, we're seeing more and more crime throughout the city, especially in the downtown core. This is something that I've noticed a huge difference with in the last 5 to 10 years. And we're seeing more break ins, we're seeing more robberies, we're seeing more violent crimes as well. But overall, I would still personally consider Halifax a pretty safe place to live. Last but certainly not least, the density is increasing in a major way, and this is affecting the overall East Coast vibe of our city. Now, this is apparent pretty much anywhere throughout HRM, but especially on the peninsula as it's getting denser and denser. The recent upzoning has upzoned a lot of areas to 30 or 40 stories, so a lot of bigger buildings are starting to be built, and therefore it's really affecting the overall vibe and the charm of our city as a whole. If you're still here watching, I'm curious if you're a local, what did I miss? Should I have had more things on my list? And I can tell you that if you're not from here and you're thinking about moving to Halifax, I can honestly say that I have no intention of leaving the downtown core anytime soon. I absolutely love living in Halifax. However, I gotta be real with you, it does come with the headaches that I talked about in this video, but overall, there's a ton of pros as well. And if you wanna learn more about those, you can check out the video that's about to pop up on the screen here in a second. And if you go to the second half of this video, it's gonna talk all about the pros of living on the Halifax Peninsula. And if you're still here watching and you got any value out of this video, all I ask is that you hit that like button and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of my future content. And that'll help push this out to more people like you who may be interested in being educated in the Halifax housing market. And until next time, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate your support and have a great day.